The Minister of Land Reform and Rural Development, Mr. Mzwanele Nyonso, will lead the commemoration of the 30th anniversary of the restitution of the Land Rights Act on the 2nd of December, which is today, at the Freedom Park Heritage Site in Pretoria, under the theme Dignity Restored Through the Land Restitution Act. SABC News reporter Neria Tlakota is at Freedom Park Heritage Site in Pretoria. Let's take you there now. Neria, good morning. So give us a sense of what's happening in anticipation of today's program.
Good morning to you, Sakina. Of course, the stage has been set here at Freedom Park in Tshwane. We are expecting, of course, a government along with other stakeholders to reflect on the 30 years of land restitution. You must remember, land restitution forms part of the principles that dictate land reform. One principle, again, it is land redistribution and land tenure. So today we will be looking at how far the department has gone in terms of land restitution. The numbers tell us that there is at least 83,000 land claims that were done between 1995 and 2024. But land reform in its totality remains a very emotive issue in the country, especially from those who lost their land as a result of the 1913 Land Act. And people have been saying land reform is taking a while in the country. But we remember during his State of the Nation address, President Cyril Ramaphosa indicated that 25% of farmland has been returned to black people. But land activists also just want to say this is not enough, especially because we had initially the ANC had that deadline of at least 30% of land being returned by 2014, and now we are 2024 and only 25% of farmland has been returned. And this has raised criticism from a lot of people, especially land activists, those who are garnering for people to get their land back. But Sakina, right now I am joined by the Chief Land Claims Commissioner, who is Nomfundo Nhloko, just to speak to us about today's program and furthermore, as the Commission, how this process of land claims is going. Thank you so much for your time, Ms. Nhloko. Let's speak about this process of land claims. It's been happening since 1995. At this point, President Cyril Ramaphosa indicated that 25% of farmland has been returned to black people. How hard has this process to give people back their land been?
Thank you very much for the opportunity. 30 years on, we are here to say we've done so much, but still so much more is needed. 30 years of land restitution, and as you've already indicated, we are but one part of the land reform umbrella. And we are guided by the Restitution Act. And the obligation was always on us to make sure that we restore land to those individuals, communities who were dispossessed as a result of racially discriminatory practices and or laws. So we received over about 80,000 claims by the cut-off date of 1998. And of those, we've settled over 90%. We have about 5,000 that are still outstanding. But not just looking at the numbers, it's important for us to actually look at what we've been able to achieve. We've got about 3.8 million hectares that has been acquired under the restitution program. And we've spent over 59 billion overall, either on financial compensation or land restoration for those communities that were able to get their land back. So a lot of work has happened, but today is an important day because 30 years on, we want to ask the question, what have we done successfully? What do we need to do to take land restitution further? And I think as an organization, the Commission on Restitution of Land Rights, it's important for us not to be inward looking. but to actually ask our partners, our stakeholders, the actual beneficiaries of land reform. And as you said, as the President had already indicated, that there were milestones that were supposed to be achieved. So it's important then for us to say, 30 years on, how have we done? What lessons have we learned? What do we need to change in order for us in the next 10 years to be able to say that we had a successful land reform program?
In fact, let me just bounce on that last statement where you say 30 years on, what have you learned and what needs to happen now in the next coming 10 years, in fact, to ensure that land restitution, the program itself, is successful beyond what it has done so far?
I think, firstly, for me today, I don't want, as the lead of the Commission, to assume that I know 100% of what should happen going forward, which is why we have this reflection. Because I'd like to hear other experts, the community's views, private sector and so forth, to hear what are their reflections in seeing what we've done. But we're very clear about the fact that, for example, the Restitution Act was introduced in 1994, even before the PMFA, which means that there are certain things that were in the legislation that did not necessarily align to the PFME. So those are some of the things that we have to look at. We also have to look at, for example, the CPAs, which is the Communal Property Associations, as the holders of the land on behalf of those communities, governance issues, issues of compliance, conflicts that sometimes happen in the community, the fact that sometimes we will give one farm to a broad community, which are no longer homogeneous, because when they were removed from the land, they ended up in different parts of the country. But now when we give them the land back, we have to almost recreate the community, which is no longer as cohesive as it was, because they were placed in different parts of the country. And also it's a different generation. And so the needs and the wants are different. And so we have to start thinking about going forward, how do we make sure that we create a restitution model that is sustainable, but also provides meaningful benefit to the communities and individuals into perpetuity. Because what we are about is the impact from the dignity that was taken away to restoring that dignity, but to make sure that the communities or individuals who are dispossessed in that platform are able to reflect in a meaningful way to say, yes, we were dispossessed, but when the government of democracy came, they then initiated restitution, and as a result, we were able to see acknowledgement of the pain, because sometimes we ignore that, because it's about acknowledgement of the pain and then providing some form of restitution, because I think that you can never really restore 100%, because what happened was indignity and broken families, broken communities and all of that. And so really the government of the day is but acknowledging and doing its best to reverse that legacy, but we can never say that we can meet that obligation 100%.
And lastly, let's just talk about the budget that is always set aside for land reform. Organizations are arguing that the budget is not enough. Therefore, it just shows the commitment or the lack of commitment by government to, make sure that land restitution happens.
I think that we have acknowledged over time that our budget has not been sufficient for us to move as quickly as we would have wanted to. As the Commission, we get allocated a budget of about 3 billion each financial year, and it's an allocation that comes from National Treasury through the Department of Agriculture, Rural Development and Land Reform. And each year we're able to expend that budget, but we always have to pause and wait for the next tranche. So I think that's why we're reflecting today, because I think that South Africa needs to understand that restitution is not an obligation of just the state. I think it's about all of us. It's about us saying that if we want to build a country that is united into the future, all stakeholders, including private sector, should play a meaningful role to find some form of budget assistance, whatever you call it, so that we're ultimately able to move this process forward, because from our side there is commitment and acknowledgement of the work that still needs to be done.
Thank you so much for your time. Obviously, as we are reflecting today on the 30 years of land restitution program, there will be a lot of discussions that are happening from various panels. We're also expecting, of course, Advocate Thembeka Ngcukaitobi SC, who's among those who have spoken about land reform a lot. He even spoke about it in his book, The Land is Ours. So basically, one of the things that also come out of discussions about land reform is the fact, of course, that this is to bring dignity to black people. It's not only about the land itself, but what them having the land means to them. And of course, when we also look at the numbers, they remain a bone of contention. We do know that earlier this year, during the budget vote, the minister did indicate that at least 13% of the land is now owned by women, but the numbers are still not clear in terms of how many black women form part of that 13%. But with discussions from today and reflections from today, we are hoping to get those answers.
Well, thanks so much, Neriya Tlhakotsa, speaking to us there from the nation's capital.